You're speaking about a war in the streets, but there was also an information war. Many of your supporters have complained about manipulation. There's even a popular song, Mentira, about the wave of what they consider fake news. I want to play you a message that was sent by WhatsApp to millions of young Nicaraguans on April 19th, which claimed to be a recording from Upoli.
Todo ese teatro.
I also spoke to students who were in Upoli at the time, and they described a scenario totally different than what was described in that message, with explosions going off, police coming in to burn everyone alive. I want to ask you about your communication strategy in the early days. Were you too quiet?
What we lived through in the war against Somoza, the war the U.S. imposed upon us in the 80s, was the communications at the time were the media. I mean, as in television, newspapers, radio, and that gave Nicaragua, of course, a negative image, and it was part of the war against Nicaragua. When we came back to government in 2007, a short time thereafter, a movement of retirees began that didn't have, at the time, coverage from the National Social Security Institute because they hadn't paid the 15 years, they hadn't paid their full quota over the 15-year period. And when we came into government, the Social Security system was already in great difficulty. But because we're sensitive to social issues, we needed to come up with a just answer. And began to think, what could we do? How can we help these retirees? But these retirees were barely out on the street when suddenly a hashtag came out called Occupy INS, which is the Social Security Institute building, and that went viral internationally. And suddenly we found ourselves confronted by this sort of embryon of a force through the social networks that was really quite powerful, actually.
Sounds like a test run.
Sí, como una prueba un poquito, ¿no? Para lo que iba a pasar después. And when the situation, because then the people came, young people who had been hearing this through social media came down to the Social Security Institute building, and they went into the building, and many of these were really the supporters of the very same parties and governments that had been in power in the 17 years when the retirees were not getting any money if they hadn't filled the entire quotas. And that was also the first time that the leaders of the Catholic Church got involved in a conflict of this nature, because they too went there then to the Social Security Institute and were talking with the young people who were there, and discussing also with the Sandinista young people who were there, who were in favor of the old people who needed to get some money, but were of course against the attacks the government was suffering, as though we had been against these people getting their quota. So what we did was we we did incorporate them, but of course that weakened the social security system even more. But that was our first experience then with the kind of media you're talking about. The second serious one we had was the fire at Indio Maíz just this past March. And there it was a lot stronger even, because they had, of course, been using the social networks throughout, attacking the government on any number of issues. And so we started realizing we had better get with it and become interested in this whole social network thing and get involved so as to defend just positions. So they were very, very strong and internationalized the issue of this forest fire that you know, the Sandinistas are destroying. In fact, put the fire there themselves, and one could see that this was being articulated with other movements here in the cities. They were obviously already thinking in broader terms. That was pointing in the direction it finally did, but no, it did not occur to us that this was going to end up being an attempted coup d'etat. We just thought it was one more battle in which they were trying to drag the government down, and they were trying to degrade the government. But I mean, we had firefighter experts here, and they told us it would take months to put it out. So that it was going to be very, very difficult to put out. And then we thought this is going to be, and of course there were international repercussions on sensitive issues such as the environment. And then it rained. It's a very, very rainy area. It rained intensely. And that was it. They couldn't continue with that banner.
But the social media continued. Do you think you responded effectively enough?
Fortalecer localmente, pues.
Well, I think we have to strengthen our networks locally. And of course with the people, with workers, young people, women, teachers, to defend ourselves and the good things, point out the good things that this process has had and done. And it is also absolutely critical to internationalize this, because they have been able to internationalize their